Another side to the enemy at the gate is going to be told to us by John Wilshire. John bought a property down the road from us, actually, in Sussex, and it's a story of what he did and what the builders gave him as a garden. John, welcome.
It'll be on a negative spin.
Turn it around.
I can
I'm not quite sure if the mics are on. Is the mic on? Yeah. No. Hello. So yes, as Charlie said, I've come from Sussex, but don't worry, I didn't travel all the way up from Sussex today. I stopped over with my in-laws in Macclesfield. Any Macclesfield fans in? Any Palace fans in? Sorry, no one will ever forget. That's my in-laws there. So thank you to them. I said I'd mention it. So my name's John. I run Smithery. It's a strategic design practice. I run it with my wife. Essentially, we make things people want rather than make people want things. And we also co-steward a regenerative practices collective called the Steps Collective, thinking about the word regenerative, which pops up everywhere. And you go, oh, when you say it in agriculture, does that mean the same as design? And people go, I don't know. So we're investigating that. But I'm here to talk about none of that. I'm just here to talk about our garden. So, as Charlie mentioned, this is Sussex. If we zoom in, this is our garden. And you know, it's a lovely garden. Now, it started like this. So, 10 years ago next month, we moved in, and it was basically this hermetically sealed unit that nothing could get into or get out of. And it was the first time we really thought about gardens, not because it's sort of like we're expert gardeners, but because my friend Rob was working on this project called My Nature Watch Camera, which is basically sort of like, rather than expensive trail cams, why don't we give people sort of like really cheap units that they can build their own and put it in a Tupperware box? So me and my 7-year-old son went, yes, let's do this. So we made it and we tested it and it worked and we put it outside and nothing. And we brought it back inside and we thought, oh, it's broken. And we thought, no, it's working. And we put it somewhere else. And then it was, no, nothing. And it's because fuck all lived there. Erica broke the swearing ban, I think. Because this is how developers then, and now, because this is the estate that's going up next door, generally clear all the land. It's like, oh, we don't want anything living there. Let's just destroy everything and then put some houses on it, and then maybe it'll come back, but it's not really ours to worry about anymore. So we started thinking, me, Helen, Charlotte, James, going, okay, what can we do to make this a better home for nature? So we started digging up the turf and making borders and thinking about the plants we put in. I'm now really worried about the plants and where we got them from. Thanks, Dave. And we built a pond. We found the instruction thing on the RSPB website going, if you want to build a pond really easily, use an old plastic washing up basin. And they go, all right, okay, so fine. And it was like, and they were going, and nature will appear really quickly. And you're like, sure. 2 days later, mating damselflies appear by this pond. And it's like, wow, you really do know. As Izzy put it earlier, the habitat is recovered and they found us. Not quite as quickly as Lulu's 1 date for a bee, so we have to up our game somehow. More insects start coming back, and then suddenly we get use of the bird feeder and the camera and stuff because we've now got lots of birds. And lots of this woodpecker clearly knew I was coming here because last week popped into the sort of like the feeder outside the kitchen window and went, hello, can I be in the talk? That's how woodpeckers speak. So this is what our back garden looks like now. So a nice improvement. So thinking about height and light and water and cover and all the things that birds need. Being me, I wrote a blog post about it because I'm 48 years old and that's what 48-year-old men do. And then Angie, who's a researcher in Gardener's World, found it and went, oh, that's good. That could make a good viewer's video. So I looked at the website. I didn't really watch Gardener's World. Am I allowed to say that here? That's okay. So I looked at the website and found a section of viewers' video, and I thought, oh, she just means like kind of like on the website. That's fine. So on a Sunday afternoon, I went out and shot a video and thought, cool, that's that done. She didn't mean on the website.
But first, we're going to visit one of your gardens. It belongs to John Wilshire in Sussex.
That's just all I've told you, and then you don't need to watch it.
John is absolutely absolutely right. It really wouldn't take much.
The number of times I've used this in out-of-context family discussions. Where should we go for dinner? Well, I think. But that to me is that's the small version of this story and the less interesting version of this story, because it's a story about one garden. And the thing that made me start thinking was like, well, birds don't care about one garden, right? They go, ha, I laugh at your human boundaries, right? Because it doesn't matter if it's my garden or the garden next door or whatever else and so on. So we started thinking about, okay, we live on this new build estate. The problem is the same repeated, and we've heard from people today about you think about all these gardens next together. So what might we do? So I started doing strange things like, so I bought 50 hedge whips, sort of like a native mix. And I bought 50, we didn't need 50, I just wanted to maybe 12 or something to put in the front garden and so on. But I bought 50 for two reasons. One, I'm Scottish and they were cheap. 54 quid for 50 hedge whips is a bargain. But the second reason was that I could give them to neighbours and just go, we're putting in a nature hedge, it'll help do this, do you want some? And people just who hadn't thought about it before thought, oh yeah, maybe we should do that, maybe that's fine. So it's just that first idea. Our neighbour Vicky lived next door and then moved slightly further away on the same estate. And it was really funny because when we were rewilding our garden, she put up a bird box and the blue tits looked at her garden, looked at our garden and went, well, we don't want to live in the restaurant. We'll live next door to the restaurant. So, but she said, I've put another bird box up and there's blue tits there. And I said, okay, let's put a WhatsApp group together and you can just send us pictures. So basically, by the end of the first day, there was 4 people on it. By the end of the first week, there was 12 people on it. There's now like 75 people across the 200 homes or whatever else we've got in the estate who are on this group. And it's basically just a nature watch group. It's like, what have you seen and where? It's not a photography group. So like any picture you've got or any observation is fine because it's just like, what have you seen and where? George of Godwin's Gardens lives on the estate, runs a little gardening company, got the contract for doing the gardens on the estate. And he said, I think we're going to do no mow May. Let's do no mow May. And I said, oh, well, George, if we're going to do no mow May, we need to use the world's most powerful piece of technology to tell people. The A4 sheet of printed paper. We printed 4 posters and went down to the bottom of this and said, like, come here Saturday morning and George will tell us for half an hour what no mow May is. And about 20 people turn up. And one of them is Ray. So this is Ray here. And Ray's saying, oh, this will be good, really good, because if we do this, we'll get these sorts of moths and these sorts of butterflies, and we'll probably attract this and such and such. And George and I are sitting here going, the fuck's this guy? Turns out Ray is one of Britain's top spider experts. And so the good thing about having a spider expert on the estate is it knows everything that eats spiders and everything that spiders eat. So suddenly you can start going, what should we be looking out for on the estate? Maddie, who's in the group, said, oh, I've applied to the Woodland Trust. They're sending us 105 saplings. And that's like, what? 105 is quite a lot. But let's have a planting party. Let's sort of do the first 20 or 25. And then George said, it's all right, do as many as we can, and then we'll plant the rest for free. And then Dave at the local tap room said, oh, that sounds like a good thing. Here, have some free beer to do it. And it's like, oh, amazing. Thanks, Dave. That's the tap in Haywards Heath. I'm just adverts, really. This is 11 o'clock in the morning. None of the beer is open. We all just took it home and put it in the fridge. Other weird things have happened is that we are the animal rescue centre all of a sudden. This summer seemed to be the time when people went, oh, I found this. What do I do with this? Can you help? So people are turning up at our door with all sorts of things. And then I just talked to someone in the Steps Collective who works for an organisation called Forum for the Future about this. And they went, oh, that's interesting. Would you mind telling someone who's collecting stories like that? And a repeating theme of this, I wasn't really paying attention and didn't realise we were going to be nominated as part of like the future of sustainability, which feels weird anyway, but it's nice. Because it gives us, sort of like, as a group, it makes us think about this estate and going, we're achieving something together. We're sort of putting all these things. But of course, robins laugh at our human boundaries. They go sort of like, well, that's too small. And you go, oh yeah, it is probably too small. So let's sort of like zoom out again and think about what else is around. So for one thing, so all of this was kind of like lands that was like planning permission by weight, and they built and they gave it to lots of small developers to kind of like to build lots of different estates. So we're thinking, how do we connect to those other new estates around us? How do we also connect to the country park that's there, the older local nature reserves that have been put up in various different decades before, and groups like the New Friends of Grace Valley Orchard. The thing about thinking in maps is you go, these are places. So we should think about going to those places and so on. But places are only places because we said they are. They're really just groups of people. So all of this thing is about going, okay, so they are our neighbours, just in different groups, in different estates, in different ways. It's like, how do we use what Charlie was talking about earlier, just like connectivity. You're always thinking about sort of like, this is the size of the thing we're working with now. How do we join it onto other things which are larger? Anna put us onto Wheel to Waves a year and a half ago, or whatever it was, and you look at that and go, that's just the same principle going out again. So, to close, what do I know now? Through our regenerative work, I've just always been thinking in terms of, call it the social, the economic, and environmental. It can't be properly regenerative unless it's doing all three of those. You can't lose one. So I like thinking about it in terms of this, the healthiest environment with the greatest economy for all in society. Biodiversity net gain just is a trade-off between the environmental and economic. It misses the people. It takes away the social element. It doesn't allow people to partake in the rewilding and the regeneration of their area. But imagine you could bring communities together by design. Imagine local experts were invited to shape new developments rather than just protest about them. Imagine everyone could access something like nature on prescription just on their front door because that's part of the place that they live. Imagine we had a collective understanding of what caring for a place looked like. Gardening is a political act, but small p political. Not big P party political. It's the daily political things that we can do together to change a place. Housing is something that's done in two places. Homes are something that are built for people, but havens are where everything can thrive. So when people say, we could build 1.5 million new homes or whatever, or houses, you go, forget that. Let's build 6,819, that's the maths, new havens. Think of these in terms of sort of like, what does a haven look like? I don't know if I'm right. But I know good regulation prompts great innovation. So this is the estate next door. Essentially, because they started building it after biodiversity net gain, they started with a wetland. And all the things that have been attracted to the wetland, all the different species, have made a massive difference, not just to their estate, but to ours too. I've got a link at the end of the talk, but go and watch The Gardener's World on Chattlewood, which is super interesting. It was a local developer working with local expertise to develop a gardening plan that was specifically brilliant for that area. And I know communities can do amazing things. Thank you.